Hello, in this tutorial I'm going to be making a SetHome script, and this will hopefully teach you my thought process when creating a new script, and you'll also be able to get some more practice using lists and functions. So, to start with, I usually write out a list of what each script needs to do. So for a SetHome script, we need a /sethome command, which could take in a home name, but if it can be optional, so if the player doesn't specify a home name, then we could just say it defaults to home. And then we need a way to teleport home, so let's say this. The argument can be optional again, and this time let's require the player to specify the argument if they've got two homes, but if they've only got one home, then there's no need for a name. So um, and maybe a list homes command would be good, so that the player can see a list of homes they've got. Okay, so let's first make the SetHome command. So we need to make the command, and it needs to take an optional string argument. String, if you remember, just means text, so this can be the name of the home. And let's give it a permission, homes.create. And let's create a variable which is set to the name of the home. And then if the argument is set, then we'll set it to the argument. So this home name is now defaults to home, but if the argument is set, then it's just whatever the argument is. And let's make that lowercase, just so that the commands are not case sensitive. And now we need to set the player's home. So we can actually store a location inside a variable. So what we can do is set, let's say, homes players UUID. Usually, if you just put player, then it'll use the UUID. But on some configs of script, you need to type in the UUID, because if you just use a player, then it'll just use the player name. And that means if the player changes their name, then all their variables will be wiped. So I would recommend getting in the habit of using player's UUID instead of the name. And then let's put in the home name. So this will be replaced with their argument, or it'll be set to home if there's no argument. And then let's set this variable to the location of player, and then send your home, and then let's put the home name. Has been set to location of player. So putting percentage signs actually just runs the code inside them. So when you're just using a variable, it's just setting the variable, which is what the code does. But you can also just like put location of player and then it'll return a location, and then that location gets converted into text. And let's run this code and see if it works. So SetHome, your home has been set to this. It's not the prettiest. We can worry about improving the formatting of the text later. And what if we set home2? And you can see home2 is the argument here. Now let's make a command to teleport home. So command /home, and it also needs a string argument because it also needs to take in the parameter, the home name, sorry. Also, I forgot to explain, but if you put just angle brackets, then the argument is required. But if you put the angle and square brackets, then it's an optional argument. And let's make another permission. And the same logic as before. You could make this a function, but it's really only 3 lines and they're simple, so I wouldn't really bother. And now we can copy this variable name, and if the variable is set, then the player has a home. So let's teleport player to that variable again. And maybe we can send a message. You have teleported to, and let's put in the home name. And also, if you don't specify a player in the sends, then it automatically defaults to the command sender. I do think it's good practice to put toPlayer at the end, just so that it's explicit who you're sending the message to. And if you're running this in a function, then you do need to specify the player. It can't default to any player. And then let's just exit, since there's nothing we need to do after teleporting them. In this case, the player doesn't have a home with this name. So then we will send a message. You do not have a home named home name. And this code is actually not correct, because if the player has only one home, but that home isn't named home, then it won't work. I think the easiest solution is just to update the specs. So yeah, sometimes you can just change what you're making, and that's the best solution, because yes, we could make it with the original. The argument is only needed if you've got 2 homes, but then that's a bit more complicated because you've got to like list out, you got to find out all their homes, and then if they've only got one, then you've got to get that home and put it into the variable. And it's really easier to just argument defaults to home. Depending on your server, maybe that other implementation is better, and then you could do that. But I'm just going to do this. So let's test this code. And let's teleport. Let's just type /home, and yeah, we get teleported home. And then if we type /home home2, then we get teleported to our other home. And now let's make a list homes command. With the same permission. This time it doesn't need to take in any arguments. And what we can just do is loop over this list. So now we've got access to two expressions. We've got loop index, which is whatever would go here. So in this case, it would be the name of a home. And we've got loop value. which is the location of the variable. No, sorry, it's the value of the variable. So in this case, it's the location of the home. And now let's send a message to the player. And let's add a case at the top where if the player has no homes. Oh, I clicked that sum button there. So if the list is empty, player has no homes. Send you have no homes to player. Oh, my IDE is messing up. Okay, and then we exit because we don't need to run any more code. And then let's maybe send your homes to player. And let's try out this code. Oh, okay, so we've got an error, and if we look at it, it says the variable can only be a single inventory slot text or a numbered thing, not more. So just from experience, I can tell that that just means is empty is the wrong syntax. If you don't know the issue, then just look at the line it tells you to, and then just try and figure out a different way to do the thing you want to do. So in this case, I'm going to get the size of it and check if it's 0. And then if we reload, it works fine. So if we list homes, then we should probably just change up the coloring just to make it a bit more readable. So we've got home, and then we've got home 2, and it says the locations. And maybe we could also make a delete home function, command. And we can just copy this code here. So we've got the home name, and actually let's require the player puts in the name of the home just so that they don't accidentally delete a home if they forget the argument. So let's put usage. You need to specify a home. And let's check if the home exists. And if it does exist, then let's just delete it. And you have deleted your home name. And we don't need to run any more code because we've deleted the home. So now we've got the case that the home doesn't exist. So let's send an error message. You do not have a home named home name. Try /list homes to player. And let's try running this code. List homes. We've got the home and home 2. Let's delete home 2 and list homes. Now we've only got a single home, and if we try to teleport to home 2, you do not have a home named home 2. Okay, let's just add that up. So it's del home name, delete a home. And if you want the formatting to be a little better, so instead of like having 2 decimal places and the yaw and the pitch and everything, what you can do is something like x value, x coordinate of loop value, and let's just check that syntax is correct. It is, I think. Yes. Can we round it down? Oh, forgot to reload. 82 meters above. Um, is it integer? No, x coordinate of block of. Nope. Block at. Yeah, okay. It is kind of a bit of trial and error to get the syntax. If you really can't get it, then just remember to take a look at the documentation for what the expressions are. So now we've got the x value. Let's put in the y value and make sure to update it there. And then the z value. And I won't put the world, but if you wanted to put the world, then you could just do world of loop value. And now let's reload and list homes, and now that's a lot better formatting. There is one issue with this, in that when you store a location in a variable, if the world the location is in gets deleted, then your variable obviously stops working. This also happens if the world's unloaded, so it's fine for a SetHome script, but if you're doing something in a bigger project where worlds were being unloaded, like for example a minigame, you might not want to store a location in a variable. So instead, you would do something like this. So you would store the x coordinate of the location in one variable, and then you store the y coordinate in another, and then z in one, and then you can also store the yaw. And pitch. Yaw and pitch are just where the player is looking, and you would also store the world. And then obviously you would need to update the code here, so instead of teleporting the player to the location, this variable doesn't exist, so you would need to build a location from this. So you can do something like location x and then y, and then just keep passing in all the parameters. I'm not going to do this because it's complicated and not necessary for a SetHome script, and you just kind of need to figure out when something complicated is worth it and when it's just better to keep it simple so that it gets done faster. That just comes with experience. Okay, that's all. Thanks for watching.